All right, welcome back. It's good to see you again. Thanks for joining the channel. Today on my bench I got a JVC KD V6 cassette deck. This is brought to me by a local gent who watches the channel. I fixed a few other items for him, and he brought this to me for service. Although it really doesn't need a repair, I'll explain what he told me was wrong with it. He says the input level is not balanced between the two channels. So depending on what you're recording, he says you're not getting a balanced measurement on the meters. But we do have an input balance control, but we'll look at that. And he also says it probably needs a speed alignment, so we can do that as well. But I was just looking at this deck. It's a nice, very nice deck. JVC, it's must be one of their top end decks because it's got a lot of features, a lot of desirable features. And let me reposition the camera. We can go over some of them and have a good look at what this thing can do. Okay, so here's a good look at the front of the V6. Got a huge vacuum fluorescent display, power button on the front here. It has a timer switch which allows you to record or play depending on your choice. When this gets powered up, let's say for example I have a program I want to record at a certain time, so I'll plug this deck into a timer, set up my source so it's playing, set this to record, and when the power comes on it'll start automatically recording. It's a nice feature. Multiplex filter, noise reduction system. We have Dolby B and C. You can turn that on and off. I have an output level, input level, a nice huge sliding potentiometer for the input. It's nice, gives you a lot of control when you have a lot of slide. This control has no independent left or right, so they put in a balance control here, a balance pot, and this is just your input balance. It allows you to tweak between the two channels. That's why I was kind of confused when he says the two channels don't match on the input. You know, is it something with the balance control or maybe not? I don't know, but we'll work on that. Turn it on. It's got a nice bright display, vacuum fluorescent, digital tape counter, a digital peak meter, 0 dBs right now, and set up for metal tape. Let's see if I can fix this up. I guess the tape sensing is automatic because there's no switches here for the type of tape to use, either low noise, chromium, or metal. But that's set for metal right now. I can see it in the window. It's our source monitor, so we can monitor the source of the tape depending on which you prefer. Memory settings, on and off, repeat, and we have counters, resets, and whatnot. The cassette mechanism is in the center here, which is kind of unusual. Usually they put it off to one side or the other, usually to the left, and it's odd to see it in the middle like that. And with the controls to the right, that's typical because most people are right-handed. They want their controls on the right for your most accessed controls. The cassette door has some LEDs on here, it looks like. Not really sure what that's all about, but we'll get into that. And then we have our typical play, pause, record, stop, fast forward, rewind, record, mute. And it's got no tape loaded, obviously. And then we have a music scan down here. We can skip from song to song. And a wired remote plug, it looks like. So yeah, it's a very nicely optioned unit. And I just want to see here. Got a tape. Let's try it out. What is going on here? We have no output. Okay, tape. Yes, so we do have recording on this tape. Alignment. Now, the JVC service manual goes through a lot of different, it's actually very comprehensive, and it goes through a lot of different alignments and adjustments in the manual, which I could do. Problem is, they specify using 6 different reference tapes to perform all these different alignments. So I obviously don't have any of these tapes, but what I'm going to start off with is doing some basic recording and playback of tones. This is a 3-head cassette deck, which makes it good. I can actually monitor exactly what I'm recording as it's playing out. I can monitor the tape as I'm recording it, so I can see the changes in real time. But as far as giving it a full alignment, I won't be able to do all of that because I don't have the alignment tapes. What I do plan on getting is I'll get a tape and I'll put some tones on it from my signal generator, and we'll use that as a reference for levels and alignment, and that'll help out quite a bit. I don't expect this to need a full alignment. Maybe what he's experiencing is a problem with, let's for example, a dirty head. If I do, let's have a look at the heads here. Let's see what they do look like. Now, I'm no expert at cassette decks, but I do know enough that cleanliness is the best for cassettes. Now let's look at this head. Look at this. Looks like it's pretty dirty. I don't know if you can see that on the camera. But you can see the 2 heads here. Let me get a pointy device. So the head on the left here, that's your record head, and this is the playback because the tape travels from left to right. But I can see a bunch of brown stuff on the back end of the head here. Let me scrape it off. But that's got to be cleaned off. I'm wondering, the capstan, it all looks okay. The roller looks okay. And the race head, it's filthy as well. You can see a little bit of dirt on there. But yeah, it's this is a lot of the problem right here. I think maybe he's experiencing low output on one channel. Maybe it's because the heads are dirty. I don't know. So what I want to do is I'm going to make a tape without touching the head, without cleaning it. I'm going to make a tape, and I'm going to feed in a series of tones, probably from 1 kilohertz up to 20 kilohertz, different levels, and I'll see how it works on the playback, because I can listen to the playback immediately, and we'll see if cleaning the head makes any difference in that regard. This thing, what does it say? It says solid casting head housing. So this whole block here is a solid casting, and that's just designed to keep the head stable, I guess. Another thing I gotta look for, I don't think anybody's been in here adjusting and tweaking. Looks like the head has got the factory seals on it, the paint, and it doesn't look like anybody's touched it, which is a good thing. Yeah, so I'll get started with the tape. I'm not going to have videotape all that because it's long and boring, but I'll get back to you when I get the results. So far everything's good. This is 5 kilohertz. This is what's going in, this is what's coming out, and they're both equal. And I'm just slowly increasing the frequency and recording different series of tones. Everything seems balanced. There's a source. There's the tape. I'm using a chromium tape. There is no tape setting adjustment for this. There's Dolby, but there's no setting for the actual tape itself. It must be automatically sensing the tape type from the knockouts on the top. So, but it seems to be working pretty good right now. We're at 6 kilohertz now. We're going to turn it up to 7. and we're getting a balanced output on the balanced levels on the output. Input is balanced as well. Everything seems normal. So I'm just going to keep going here all the way up to 20 kilohertz, and we'll see how this plays out. Okay, I'm at 10 kilohertz here, and pretty much the signal's dropped off the face of the earth. Here's what I'm monitoring. That's what I'm getting back, pretty much nothing. 10 kilohertz isn't very good. Could be my tape though. It is an old tape. I don't think it's that bad though, but let's just keep going. Let's try 11 kilohertz. This is pretty much non-existent. Turn this up to 0 dB again. And we got nothing coming back. So I'm going to conclude that there. I'm going to stop this and clean the heads now, and I'm going to try one more time. Alright, so I ran the same tests after I did the cleaning. I cleaned the heads and capstan, roller, erase head with alcohol, and I did demagnetization of the heads as well, because the 3-head deck needs demagnetized. And really no difference, no change in the frequency response of the deck itself. I think the tape I'm using, it's a epitaxial Maxell XL2. It's an old tape from the 80s. It's probably a good tape back in its day, but today it's nothing compared to like a metal tape. But it's still a decent tape for just, you know, recording music for playing in your vehicle. So I don't know what else to do with this. I really don't want to muck around with any adjustments or anything like that. I might go through the manual or the service manual and have a look, and I might go through, if it's easy pickings, I might just go through and tweak some things, but I kind of doubt it. I think it's pretty good the way it is. I'm not getting any imbalance between the two channels on the recorder or the playback. So the next thing he wanted done was the speed adjustment, so I'll go through and I'll do that, and we'll see how that turns out. Alright, so lid's off. Let's have a look inside. A peek at what's going on here. It's a very nice construction for a cassette deck. JVC did some good work here. Everything's laid out on one main board. Power supply section up here. Output devices are heat sinked, so you know the back of the unit gets a little bit of heat. One of the nice things about cassette decks is they don't generate a lot of heat. For example, this one running right now is consuming 12 watts of power. So you don't get a lot of heat buildup inside the cabinet, and there's no ventilation on here, which is another good thing. No ventilation means no dust getting in, and that means long life for the cassette mechanism and for a lot of the devices, because they don't get coated in dust and insulated from letting out that heat. So yeah, not very much heat generated inside, no dust getting in. It's all a good thing. Power transformer is up in the corner there. It's convoluted kind of mounting name. Engineers figure that's the best position for lowest hum and noise, maybe. That's what I'm guessing. A little bit of this is a display board up top here for runs the vacuum fluorescent display, and then everything else audio, and we got Syscon on here on the side. This is Syscon power supply, like I said, and then input output. Very nice. Everything's nicely labeled and laid out and easy to work on. Even the belt would be easy to change. It's a matter of taking that back plate off, and you got full access to the belt. So okay, so we got the lid off. I have the scope hooked up to the output. We're going to test the tape speed. So let me get picture-in-picture, get another camera set up for the scope, and we'll get that underway. Alright, so we're all set up for speed test. I have the scope hooked up to the right channel, and it's displayed on the picture-in-picture. Let's start playing a tape with my test tone on it. The adjustment for motor speed is on the back of the motor. There's a little cutout, and you have to hit it with a small screwdriver. So what are we at right now? We're at 3.055 kilohertz. That's a little fast, so we need to slow it down a little. I don't know if you can see that up on the screen. It's right here in this corner. There's a little frequency counter, and it's right now it's reading 3.55. Let's stop this and go forward a few minutes on the tape, just because there might be a variable at the beginning. Okay, let's try that again. And what are we measuring? 3.5051. Okay. So let's try adjusting this. 3.05 kilohertz is probably about 1.5% fast. Okay, I think I got the pot there. 0.002. There we go. I think we're bang on. 0.0001. So I'm going to leave it at that. I'll let that play for a while. That motor has been spinning for quite a while now because I had a tape inserted. When you take the tape out, there's a sensor that senses when the tape is in or out, and when there's no tape in here, that motor shuts off to, reduce wear and tear on the belts and the motors and bearings. But I think I got it bang on here. It's actually going down a little bit. It's right around 2.999. So I'll leave it at that and monitor this for a while, and then I'll close it up. I'm just going to do a test recording using the 3 heads. I can compare instantly the difference between what's going in, what's coming out. So let's have a little listen. This is the source. Here's the tape. Let's record some. That's their source. That's the tape. Now I can't play too much of that because it's copyright. Now you can see there's quite a huge difference between the two. I'm not pleased with the sound of this. It just doesn't sound good. I got a TDK SA90 in here. And I tried it with a Maxell tape. 2 different Maxell tapes, the same thing. So what I've done is I printed off all of the alignment procedures for the record and playback. I'm going to go through and do some of that right now. I'm going to see if I can make an improvement on that sound. But it just doesn't sound very good at all. Okay, so this is where I really didn't want to go, but I think I had to. Doing the head alignment here. Usually I don't like to touch the head alignment. If it's got a factory seal on it, I leave it alone because monkeying around with it usually makes things worse than better. But this thing had a poor frequency response on the high end. I wanted to just make sure that maybe something if it got bent or out of alignment. I just wanted to make sure if it wasn't something like that. And the only way to find out is go in and do the adjustment. The service manual kind of gives you an idea of how to go about it. It tells you which adjustment does what, and gives you a thing for gives you a guideline for aligning the heads here. That's what I'm going by. First you go through and you align the erase head, and I've done that. And that's not as critical as the other ones. This one here, it does affect the tape path because there is guides on the head that will adjust the tape if it's too far one way or the other. And you got to center that for the best. So that's what I've done. And now I'm going in and adjusting these. The reason I had to yank the mechanism out of the chassis is because they had some kind of red glue on these adjustment screws, and you really had to just dig it out. And because there's no way you could turn it with that stuff in there, and you just don't use a regular screwdriver. You also have to. I had to make a screwdriver. Here, I'll show you what it looks like. You get a regular screwdriver and you put a notch in the tip. This is like a 4 millimeter wide, and I had, this is actually a Radio Shack screwdriver. I don't know if you can see it. It says Archer on it. But I had this kicking around. It had a broken tip on it. So what I did is I took it to the grinder and I reground a new tip on it. And then I added the notch in the middle. And that allows you to go and do the adjustment. Because there's a little, the post is in the middle. That's why you need the notch to clear that post when you're adjusting. So if you don't have one of these, it's easy to make, just with a grinder and you know, a spare screwdriver you can sacrifice. So I'm going to go through. I did some preliminary adjusting, and it did not improve much. It improved a very little bit, but not much. So I'm going to finish this and get this all back together. Lock these screws when I'm done so they don't turn, and then I'll move on to the electronics adjustments. All right, I think I'm making progress here. One thing I didn't really, the service manual really wasn't clear on is there's three sets of separate adjustments. One is your erase head, one's your playback head, and one's your record head. But what it doesn't make clear is you need to make the adjustment to your playback head first, and then you worry about your record head after, because there's a plate here that the playback head sits on, and when you do your azimuth adjustment for the record head, or playback head, sorry, that whole plate moves. But on that same plate, the record head is mounted. So as you move the adjustment for the playback, the record is going to move as well. So you have to separate those two doing the alignment, which means you have to get it playing a tape properly first, and then worry about getting it to record a tape properly first. So I think I got it. I got it set up here. I'll show you a little snip of this tape. That's with Dolby on. Dolby off, it gets even a little better. So it's starting to sound good, and but I'm still having troubles getting it to sound good on recording. So I've been going back and forth, recording test tones. For example, here's a test tone I'm recording right now. This is 6 kilohertz, and I've been tweaking this here for about an hour, and this is about as best as I can get it. What am I feeding in here? Let's see if I can figure this. Feeding in a +3 decibel signal, I'm getting back -15. So yeah, the frequency response is definitely improving, but I think I still need to go through the electrical alignments, especially the Dolby, because it seems to sound better with the Dolby off. You get a better frequency response when I record with the Dolby off than when I put it on. It seems to be overemphasizing, or how do we say, de-emphasizing the signal. And I think that's part of the problem here. So we'll go through and do some more alignments. Okay, so I'm pretty much finished with this to the point where me fiddling and adjusting anything more isn't going to make any difference. I think I got it as best as I can get it. The hardest part was the head alignment. I forgot to mention in the last little clip there, you had to do the playback head first because the record head is mounted on the playback plate. So if you adjust the playback head, if you adjust the record head and get that dialed in, the minute you adjust your playback head, you throw your record head out of whack. So you got to do your playback head first. That's critical. And I had to scramble and find a tape that was good enough for me to use as an alignment tape. I don't have proper tapes here. This is not something that doing cassette decks is not my forte. But seeing as I'm getting more and more cassette decks now, I think I might have to start investing in some tools, alignment, for doing alignments, proper alignments, and that would help me out quite a bit. But like I was saying, the procedure wasn't very clear in the manual that you have to do the playback first. They did have it in the right order, but it wasn't. They should have mentioned that this must be done before step 2. Anyways, I did get it dialed in, but I'm still confused as to why that head was so far out of alignment, considering it had the original factory seal still on the alignment screws. I think maybe somebody got a tape jammed in there sideways or something and tried closing the door, maybe bent the head. There's lots of reasons. Maybe somebody's sticking fingers in there, we don't know. But anyways, I dialed it up the best I could. It seemed like it was a compromise between having a deck that played tapes perfectly and having a crap record on it, or having a mediocre playback and a mediocre record that worked decent in both senses. It seems like the head itself was the problem, but I didn't see a lot of headwear on this, and it wasn't that filthy that it made a difference. But we got it all set up now. I went through, did the electrical alignments after the mechanical alignments, and that was even more perplexing than doing the head alignments, because their instructions had some errors in them. They were referencing, I think there's a spot here where they referenced the wrong potentiometer, and there was a few other, reading through it, it was really tough. There was a few other mistakes here. This, for example, the bias oscillating frequency. I went through this procedure, and it says adjust the oscillator block L901 and set it to 81 kilohertz. Well, I go through all this, I connect up my counter. Well, it's up in around 98 kilohertz. What's going on? So I try turning it down. The lowest I can get it is at 91 kilohertz, maybe. There's no way I could adjust it down to 81 kilohertz. So I'm wondering if that's a mistake as well, if that's another typo. I'm not sure, but for whatever reason it just wouldn't dial in. But it did make an improvement on its performance. Went through and did the frequency response. This is the bias EQ setting, and this helped a lot because I think this was out quite a bit. And but we're just going to leave it at that for now. I didn't go through any of these other checks. As far as I can tell, everything on this deck is working 100%. All right, I'm going to leave it at that. Here's one more listen. But time to say thanks for watching. And see you on the next one.